get up.
The Big Show on Kiss 92.
Gotta get up.
Good morning, wakey wakey. It is Monday here on The Big Show with Angel and the Flying Dutchman. Glenn is homesick and we wish him a speedy recovery, but we do have for company two very special people this morning. We've got Bibi Chia, our principal dietitian, and her guest, which I'll allow you to introduce, Bibi.
Sure, I have a good friend here with me. His name is Joey. He's a sommelier, but also a wine director in San Francisco. And today he's going to talk to us about, wines. What's the difference between vegan, bio, and organic wines? There's a huge difference. He's also the director of two companies in Singapore, Fermented, as well as FatsoSomm.
Yes, because I'm very fat.
Good morning, Joey, and welcome
Morning.
to The Big Show.
Thanks for having me.
It's the perfect topic for a Monday, wine.
Monday morning, especially
We
8
like it.
o'clock. 8 o'clock is the perfect time to start because it's always wine o'clock somewhere, right? So, Bibi was saying that you're going to tell us the difference between vegan, biodynamic, and organic wine. Let's start with vegan because not many people know that wines may not be vegan. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, so the fermenting process in general is about the same for all categories of wine, for still wines, and then it gets at the end, there's filtration process. So with filtration, you're going to get terms like isinglass, which sounds something like out of the Lord of the Rings, which is pretty cool. But if you're a vegan, you want to avoid isinglass because that is fish bladders. And so they use fish bladders, egg whites, and they put it in the barrel before they bottle it, and it'll go down, it'll take away the spent yeast cells, so it clarifies the wine. So if you don't want those in your wines, you're going to want to search for people and places that don't use that kind of thing. And the best way to do that, if we look at one of the bottles we have here, it'll actually say vegan on the back, especially in New Zealand, they're very big on vegan wines, and they just let it, basically they drop the temperature a little bit in the tank, and the spent yeast cells will just fall down naturally on their own. So you don't really need to do that. Yeah.
So they don't really replace the isinglass with anything else?
Correct, yeah. So it's like you'll hear it a lot. I don't know if you've ever watched, in the United States, they had like Coors and Budweiser, cold stabilized, blah, 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 which basically means they don't do anything and they just let it drop to the bottom. And that clarifies the wine a little bit. It's not quite as clear as using egg whites or fish bladders or charcoal, but it gets the job done, I think, just fine. And I don't think people are as concerned with full clarity anymore in their wines. I think a little cloudiness is probably a sign that it's a little bit more on the better side.
Okay. What about biodynamic wines?
Yeah, so biodynamic and organic in many ways are very similar. It's all about organic viticulture, so what happens in the vineyard. That's usually, you can't really do organic winemaking. That process is kind of on its own. But in the vineyard, so organic is, where you're using organic, you're not using pesticides, you're, using organic manure to do that. And then taking it a step further, there's biodynamic, which is an entire process where they take the cycles of the moon and they're only allowed to harvest at certain days of the year, do certain things in terms of, how do we fertilize? We've got to get a horn and we dump it in with manure and we bury it in the soils, and it has to be done at different parts of the year based on the moon cycles. So even during during harvest in different parts of the world, you can't harvest unless it's like a full moon and so on and so forth. I think a lot of winemakers and wineries use that style because it allows them to get closer to understanding and really getting into the environment of the vineyard. And that's really, when it comes down to the quality of the grapes, that's a good thing. So they keep an eye on it a little bit more than just plain organic. But organic viticulture, I think, is where 90+% of wineries are going, just because why not? If you can, it doesn't really raise the price as much anymore, even in the United States. So I think a lot of people are looking at that as a sustainable option going forward.
Wow, okay, that brings a whole new meaning to Harvest Moon.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay, we're going to be talking more about wine and everything wine, and I think Bibi is going to be cooking up a casserole as well on the Big Show TV. If you want to join us, just head to our YouTube and Facebook channels. It's /Kiss92FM. Today is Monday, the 27th of March.
Kiss 92 Day Check by Gain City. Gain City's 42nd anniversary.
That sounds like a whole ritual. You said they take a horn and they wait for the full moon and then they put it in manure and all that. It's like a whole ritual. I almost see like Red Indians dancing. I'm not allowed to say Red Indians, but dancing around a fire pit or something.
It's pretty similar to that. A few years ago, I went to the southern part of France and they had like the summer solstice party and they were doing all sorts of things that I thought, are we doing wine or are we in a cult?
What were they? No, please share. What were they doing?
No, they were just like, I mean, they had the horn and they put, manure into it and like you're going out into the vineyard and you're thinking, okay, that's interesting. But I think for them, it's a whole mindset. It's a philosophy more than just what they're doing. So it's quite interesting. And a few people, wineries that we work with, they actually are biodynamic, and he said the reason they went with that was because they wanted to convert to organic, and it made life a lot easier for them to track what they were doing the whole time. So even though you got the moon cycles and different days of the year to do different things, it helped them maintain kind of more control and understanding of what they were doing in the vineyard. So I think that's why a lot of people do that. Other people really do believe that it creates a better vineyard environment. You get better grapes, more concentrated fruit. I think we're still a little bit off, a little bit of ways away from really seeing that. As more wineries turn organic, then we can kind of compare.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Okay.
Joey, for sommeliers like yourself, we go into a restaurant, there's sommeliers. We go into a wine establishment, there's sommeliers. And you recommend wines for us. But isn't wine really just a personal preference?
Absolutely, 100%. But I think that's where, like, as someone like, if you came into a restaurant I worked at and you're like, I had this wine 2 weeks ago. It was I think it was more like this. What is your profile? And then we could then turn around and hopefully find something on our list, because I mean, obviously the sommelier should know what they have. If they don't, they should probably find a new job. But and then we choose a wine that will probably fit your profile. If you have 3 different people at your table and you ask questions, you should be able to find a wine that everybody could enjoy.
Can enjoy. Yeah.
Okay, let's get Bibi to do her demo so that then we can go back on air later and then talk to Joey a little bit more about wines and all that.
Yes, so
we got one minute, so maybe an introduction.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna do open a bottle of wine to do a bit of the cooking, and Joey's gonna show us how to properly open a bottle of wine. I always fail opening a bottle of wine. And today we're gonna make a chicken casserole with my favorite mushroom. So typically you would use a white butter mushroom or other kinds of mushroom, but today I'm using a maitake. So maitake is a Japanese style mushroom. It's called the dancing. I think it's called the dancing hands or something like that. You know?
Wow.
Just because it looks like the tail of the roosters or something like that. So this mushroom, why is it special? Is because it's much higher in vitamin D than other mushrooms that you can find. So typically mushrooms that are grown with sunlight in contact, they tend to be higher in vitamin D.
Okay, we're just going to traffic, and then you can briefly describe the ingredients, and then we'll ask Joey a bit about wine, and then we'll go back.
Kiss 92 traffic.
Okay, looking at the roads on the BKE towards the PIE, right before the Dairy Farm Road exit, an accident has been spotted. Also on the BKE towards Woodlands, right before the Mandai Road exit, a vehicle has broken down there. Wherever you are today, stay safe. Good morning, and thanks so much for tuning in to The Big Show. We are also live on The Big Show TV on our YouTube channel /Kiss92FM. It is not Glenn, it is Angel and the Flying Dutchman as Glenn takes a break and rests in bed. We also have Bibi as well as her guest Joey, and we're speaking about everything wine. Now, earlier, Joey, we were talking about a little bit about wine on The Big Show TV, and FD was asking a question about choosing wines in a restaurant.
Yeah, so it does boil down to to a personal preference, I feel. So where does the sommelier in a restaurant come in?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think a lot of times people overlook the role of the sommelier. I think Singapore, we're getting there. I think if you come into a restaurant that I worked at or people that I would trust, you say, hey, I really liked this wine that I had a couple weeks ago. And we'd ask, what was the flavor profile? What did you like? That kind of thing. And then you get dogs barking as well, and you got to just work with it.
Yeah.
They like wine too, so, but yeah, I think, once you can choose and figure out what someone's profile is or what the group of people at a table, someone might say, I like Bordeaux, I like Napa. Maybe we go to a place like Washington State that's kind of a little bit in between. Everybody's going to like that kind of profile. And so I think that's the kind of the role that people do.
Yeah, I got to say, I had an experience like that a couple of weeks ago. I was at a steak place, and I like Malbec with my steak. But this place didn't carry a Malbec. But he did come up with an...
I don't know if that's a proper steak place.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But he did come up with an alternative that blew my mind, though. Yeah,
nice.
It was really good.
But what about the rules for white with white and red with red?
Yeah.
I mean, does that still apply? Because a lot of the restaurants you walk into, they'll say whatever your preference is. There are no hard and fast rules anymore.
I mean, I don't think there's necessarily hard and fast rules. I think those rules are kind of based off of more Eurocentric tastes and profiles. I worked at one of the first modern Indian restaurants in San Francisco for a few years, and people would come in and they would want spicy food, and they'd be like, I want a big tannic Cabernet. And you're like, no, that's wrong. But they really enjoyed it. And then you realize, especially here in Singapore, people who grew up with tea, and tea has tannins in it, so they're used to that with their food. So they can handle more tannic foods while other people, kind of struggle with that.
Yeah.
So I think there are rules, but you always have to understand, the person in front of you. If they're okay with that and they're enjoying it, then that can't be wrong. And so I think it's a combination of the two.
Okay, let's continue this conversation on The Big Show TV. Join us and watch Bibi make that casserole with a bottle of red wine and find out how to properly open a bottle of wine on The Big Show TV on our YouTube channel. It's Kiss 92 FM. The time right now is 8:13.
Kiss 92 time check brought to you by Putian.
Okay, properly opening a bottle of wine and not hurting anybody.
Yeah, let's do this.
Maybe Joey, you can show us how to open a bottle of wine while I marinate this chicken. So I'm using chicken breast today, just to lightly marinate it with a little bit of salt and pepper, and then some flour, just to coat it so that when I sear it, it doesn't lose its juices. And then after that, I'm going to take it out while I'm going to saute the rest of the ingredients. Put the chicken back, put some red wine, and pop this casserole back into the oven.
Nice.
Right.
Okay.
So I need the wine to make this dish.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is, the most important thing is to get the cork out of the bottle without spilling or breaking it, which I'm sure I can manage to do both today. But a lot of times you'll look at the lip of the bottle and you'll see there's two lips. And a lot of people open the first one, but if you do that and you start to pour, it's going to spill more. So you always want to open the second lip underneath the foil. And if you want to do proper service, always put the label in front of your guests, even at home. It's important. And then you can do it either way. I always like to do the back side first and then do that. Then you just take the cork up like that. Comes off. And then this is the fun part. So when you open a bottle, a lot of times people will just grip it and rip it.
Yeah.
And it makes that cork sound, which I guess studies have shown if you hear like a champagne cork open, people are a little bit thirstier. But in terms of,
Is that a fact?
It is. It's a true story. But you get it to the top like that, and then you just like kind of twist softly, and then it comes off.
Oh, wow.
So what is corks versus caps? I mean, is there a difference?
I mean, corks have just been used longer historically, and I think that a lot of traditional wineries and winemakers use them. A lot of people think that because there's cork, there's a little bit of oxygen coming into it, so that helps the wine to age a little bit. The screw caps from Australia, they don't allow oxygen into the wine, so they kind of in many ways preserve it longer. I don't think that, for me personally, I think there's a lot of people who only want corks or only want screw caps. My family's Portuguese, so obviously we should be using natural corks. But no, it doesn't really matter.
How long will wine stay fresh once I've opened it?
That's a good question. I think if, here in Singapore, don't leave it out. The heat will deteriorate it pretty quick. But if you open, let's say you open, this bottle and you finish half of it, as we have half of it here, you can cork it, put it back in your regular fridge, and it'll last a good 3 to 5 days, probably just fine. It'll lose a little bit of freshness, but I think it'll still be quite drinkable.
Okay.
And you're not going to lose too much.
Okay.
Okay.
3 to 5 days.
And you were mentioning natural cork earlier, because now they have synthetic corks as well, don't they?
Correct. And I think that's probably the way that people are going to go in general, because I think people like that opening the bottle process. I think it's kind of fun for a lot of people. And those actually do not allow for any cork taint. So sometimes you open a bottle and you get that like stale cardboard smell. That, it's less common these days, but it does still happen. But with the synthetic corks, it's literally, if someone tells you, oh, it's corked, and you're like, but it's a synthetic cork, they're just not, they don't have they can't do aromas that well. So.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Joey, I always hear this. You open a bottle of wine and you have to let it breathe. How long does it have to breathe for? I never know.
It really depends on the wine. What I always tell people is if they're dealing with a new wine that they've never had before, if it has a lot of tannic structure, so if a big red, that's probably going to need a little bit of time. But the best way to do it is to pour some in a glass, pour some in a decanter, and then leave it in the bottle, and then just test it out over a little bit of a period of time. Most wines, if they're lighter, they really are not going to need more than like a minute or two.
Okay. Most
wines are ready to go in general. I think.
So white wines never need to breathe, right? Only reds.
So sometimes if you open a white wine and you get almost like a very flinty, smoky type of smell, sometimes you're going to want to let that about 30 seconds to a minute, and that'll blow off. That's because the wine was made without using with oxygen not part of the process. So it'll kind of open up and you'll get more of the aromatic feel after a minute or two with some whites. And that's becoming a more common process because the wines stay fresher longer, and they'll do better in travel and that kind of thing.
Okay. Because I heard once that the older wines need more time to breathe. Is that true?
I would actually say the opposite.
The opposite, right? Okay.
If you have an old wine, don't ever put it in a decanter. If you must, then that's okay. But they're going to die out a lot quicker because they're more fragile.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Sorry, Bibi. Go back to your cooking your casserole.
Let's go.
So I have heated some extra virgin olive oil in a pan, and then I'm just going to sear the chicken on both sides a little. So what I've done just now was to marinate the chicken with a little bit of salt, pepper, and coat it with flour. That will help to seal the chicken so that it stays tender. And then once it's done, I'm going to remove it and start sauteing the vegetables. So I'm using maitake, which is dancing mushroom. I went to check the name again, okay? And then I'm using some red peppers, carrots, and we'll flavor it with a bit of tomato paste. And also we're going to use a bit of this wine in the cooking. And also I forgot, there will be some garlic and onion, which I will also saute these two aromatic vegetables. The spices we're using, it's very simple, just a bit of thyme and paprika. I just realized that I ran out of fresh thyme, so I'm just using a dried one, and also a powdered paprika. And so what's special about this dish is that after it's done, you don't usually stew it on top of the stove. You pop it in the oven to give it a more even cooking. So you're stewing inside the oven itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this one, we noticed when he first arrived, I'm like, hey, it's half a bottle. How did you not open it and have half a bottle, right? So he explained to me that it's using a system called Coravan.
Yeah, Coravan.
Oh,
it's a great way. So that's us. Actually, if you do want to splurge and spend a few $100s on it, and you don't have someone at home that drinks with you, which is quite sad in general, but you can use this needle, pour out like a glass for yourself, and then the bottle's still pretty good for another 1 to 3 months, depending on the wine. And it's
So
a
it's
great
a
way
wine
to,
keeper, right?
yeah, in that sense, like it's a long needle that goes
Okay.
in, and
Sorry,
then
hang
you
on.
use argon.
We're going back on the radio.
Kiss 92 traffic.
On the PIE towards Changi Airport, right before Lornie Road, avoid lane 2. An accident has been reported. Also on the BKE towards Woodlands before the Mandai Road exit, a vehicle has broken down. If you have anything else, you can always WhatsApp it in to 8855-0920. You're tuned into The Big Show with Angel and the Flying Dutchman, and we have on The Big Show and The Big Show TV our guests for this morning. We have Bibi Chia, our principal dietitian, as well as Joey, our sommelier for the week. And we're talking about wines, cooking with wines, how to open a bottle, and all things interesting.
Interesting. You were talking about how we can have an unopened bottle of wine that's only half a bottle. Can you explain that again?
Yeah, so there's a system called Coravan that uses a needle with argon gas. So you take the needle, you put it through the cork, and it goes all the way through the cork, and then you tip the bottle over, and you can pour out a glass using the gas, and it will, when you pull the needle back out, the cork kind of reseals, not 100%, but won't drip. It'll last for a good month or two, depending on the wine, and it's a great way for myself. We take wines around to different people to try to get them to buy them at restaurants, and that's the way we can do it without losing
Opening
the wine.
a whole bottle, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've seen those systems. How do you store red wine? Because you're meant to drink it under a certain temperature, right? A lot of people in Singapore, because it's so humid, you stick it straight in the fridge, but then it ends up being too cold. How do you solve that problem?
I mean, the best way is to you can use a wine fridge.
Yeah, if you don't have that.
If you don't have that, yeah. I mean, actually, I would say you can keep it in the fridge, and then when you pull it out, let's say, if you have your AC on, give it about 30 minutes, just sitting there, 30, 40 minutes, and it'll probably get to that temperature that you want. Bigger Cabernet Sauvignons, you want a little bit warmer. Pinot Noir, straight out of the fridge, after about 20, 30 minutes, you're going to get to that nice, cooler temperature that I think is ideal. Here in Singapore, it's hot. I don't mind reds being a little bit cooler than other places in the world. I think that's fine. But yeah, I think that's fridges. Use your fridge, and then just pull it out a little bit before you wanna drink it.
You want to drink it?
Okay,
Cool.
okay, good tips there. Good tips. You were talking earlier about vegan versus biodynamic versus organic wines. Are there massive price differences between the three different types?
No, not really. I think the prices are getting to be about the same. In the United States, in certain places, as they've converted into organic and certified organic, that does cost money. The USDA charges you a fee every 3 years to certify yourself. But for the most part, wineries are no longer really passing that off to consumers because the vast majority of them are already, turning organic and doing that. But as Bibi is going to use this wine, I did want to say it's really cool. This producer from Central California, I think they take organic, biodynamic, vegan, natural, and they take it a step further into what I think we all should be actually drinking, and it's sustainable wineries. So they're not natural. They add a little bit of sulfur to it, which we can talk about later, but they actually bring in more carbon than they emit. So they're what we would call like carbon positive.
Oh.
So they capture the carbon, and in the bottling process, they reuse that carbon dioxide to help in other ways across the vineyard in the winery. And I think that's kind of, for me personally, like that's more important than how organic or not a winery is, because at the end of the day, they're doing things that will help our kids, if we have kids, live into this world. So that's really cool. And the wine's good, because sometimes you get great wines or wineries with great stories, and you're like, I really want to like this wine. And thankfully, they do a good job.
Wow, sounds fantastic. Okay, let's head back onto the Big Show TV and complete that chicken casserole that Bibi is making with the red wine. Head to our YouTube channel right now. It's Kiss 92 FM. Today is Monday, the 27th of March.
Kiss 92 Day Check by Gain City. Gain City's...
Okay, let's do some cooking.
Bibi, where are we at now?
I had to turn down the fire a little bit because I don't want the listeners to hear the zzzz while they are driving. But yes, it smells good, and I'm just turning the chicken around to sear it evenly on both sides, and then I am going to take it out so that we could saute the other ingredients before we put the chicken back in, and also pour the lovely wine in there. So I'm actually curious, I've been told that, if you cook white, like meat, like chicken, you would use white wine. And if you cook red meat, you use red wine, right? Is that something?
I think in general, it's more about the sauces as opposed to the meat. So if you're getting like a sauce that has a little bit of cream to it or something that's a little bit heavier, then you'd probably want to use a heavier wine. But I think chicken is probably the most versatile, so you can be a little bit more flexible, be more fun with it. I like Pinot Noir, especially a Pinot Noir, especially from maybe the New World, because it adds a little bit more fruit to the dish, but you still get that earthy rusticness that I think chicken kind of deserves, especially with the mushrooms as well.
Okay, do we get to taste this wine?
Yes, I don't know.
Bibi, hang on. It's only 8:26, Bibi.
Go for it, Bibi.
I thought we were just drinking.
Maybe you can tell us how to nose, how to taste.
I think that's for you.
Thank you.
So I think
Cheers.
the biggest thing.
Cheers.
We'll send you guys some later. So I think the best thing is, you'll hear a sommelier and they'll be like, "Oh my God, this is whetstone, blah blah blah," and you're like, "Oh my God, how do they get there?" But I always say, break it down. Go big, then go small. So if you're talking red wines, you're going to get red and dark fruits. Try to figure out, is it a red fruit? Is it a dark fruit? And then from there, determine, okay, if it's a red fruit, is it raspberries, cranberries? What is that kind of fruit? And then from that, you can do the state of that fruit. So is it smashed? Is it stewed? Is it ripe? Is it tart? And I think once you start to break it down in that way, you're gonna be able to identify what you like and what you don't like a lot better than just picking a glass up and chugging it.
Yeah, because every time someone says, do you smell the chocolate? I just lie and say yes, because I don't. So I find it so hard to kind of identify what's in a wine.
Yeah, the best way to figure out the flavor profiles is go to a place like Scoop. We're kind of post-COVID, so you can do this now, I think, and just lift up the things and start smelling them.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's also interesting because I was taught this when we were doing whiskey, smelling whiskey. You smell it with your mouth open, and that changes how the whole system works. So with wine, do I do the same thing?
Absolutely. You'll get a little bit of oxygen will help accentuate the flavors and the esters, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, Bibi, where are you at right now?
Oh, so the chicken breast that we have marinated and coated with flour, I have seared it on both sides. I'm taking it out. We're going to put it back again to cook further. So inside is still not done. It's just seared on both sides. I'm going to just add in a little bit more olive oil and saute the onion and garlic as your aromatic vegetables. You can use the original recipe calls for butter, but butter is not as healthy, so we're using olive oil today. Just a little bit of garlic and onion. Yes. Okay, just going to saute that. And while that's happening, while I'm trying to brown the aromatic vegetables, I'm going to cut up the mushrooms. So today I'm using maitake. You can use other mushrooms if you like, but maitake is like my favorite mushroom. You don't even have to cut them, right? You can just peel them apart. Okay. So this is a mushroom that you can find in our regular supermarket. I think it's unusual, but we're getting more supermarkets in Singapore that carries maitake. And what I really like about this mushroom is that it's very high in vitamin D. So typically, if you look at, say, white button mushroom, per 100 gram, you probably have 7 to maybe 20 IU of vitamin D. This is 1,000 IU.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's really different. Yeah. So people who are vitamin D deficient, if you are, vegetarian and you struggle to get enough vitamin D, or you don't go out in the sun enough, then you might want to buy this mushroom, maitake.
Man, I'm so white, I need that mushroom. I definitely don't have enough vitamin D.
Glenn would say play golf.
Yeah, right?
I'm just going to add 2 vegetables in there. So the dog that you hear barking is my new dog.
Oh,
Maybe
you have
I
a new
can-
dog.
Yes, I have 2 dogs now. I'm so lucky. Okay,
Wow.
Jojo, come here.
So there's
So-
miso and soju.
Jojo.
Oh, Jojo. I thought she said
I thought it was
soju.
miso and soju. I was thinking, good.
That's like vodka and soju.
Jojo!
Oh, hey, Jojo. Oh, my goodness. How old is Jojo?
Jojo is 9 months old, and
Oh.
so he's still a puppy. And so he's just yapping all the time.
Wow.
Very nice.
Continue cooking. So I'm going to add the vegetables in there first before putting back the chicken. And I think Joey mentioned this wine. I thought it was a rosé, but it is not a rosé.
Yeah, so
it's
this is
not.
a
It's
really
not a
inter-
rosé.
It's not a rosé, so it's actually 4 white grapes that are blended together, and then they put them and they make this wine like a red wine. So it's skin contact, or a lot of people will refer to them as amber wines or orange wines. And they leave it on the skins for about 15 days, so it gets a little bit of color, a little bit of tannic background. So it's a great wine if you have people who hate, like, I don't drink white wine. This is a great option because you'll get a lot of the aromatics that you enjoy from your white grapes, but then it's also going to have a little bit more of that tannic structure that red wine drinkers will also enjoy. Plus, the label is really cool. Love you bunches. So obviously, it's a win for everyone.
Okay, we're going to go back on the radio, and then we'll do the last talk set on the air, Bibi, and then go back to TV.
Kiss 92 traffic.
Okay, if you're on the PIE heading towards Changi Airport, you'd want to look out before Lornie Road. Causing a bit of congestion all the way to Engneo Avenue is an accident. You want to avoid lane 2 as well. You can WhatsApp us with any information you may have about what's going on out there. It's 88550920. Good morning and welcome to the big show. We are with me. I keep wanting to say Glenn and
yeah.
Angel. No. Glenn's not here. It's Angel and the Flying Dutchman.
Everybody forgets me.
And Bibi as well as Joey. And we're talking about wines. And Joey, you were just telling us that there's a bottle sitting in front of you that looks a lot like rosé, but you said it's actually made out of 4 white grapes.
Yeah, so this is it's called Love You Bunches from Santa Barbara. And it's 4 white grapes, and they make this wine like a red wine. So they take the grapes, and 99% of all grapes and grape juice is clear. So you get the color from the skins. And so what they do with these is they take the juice and they allow the skins to sit with the juice for about 15 days. So it gives it a little bit more color, a little more pigmentation. Which usually you don't do with white wines. Usually they run the juice off and then and ferment it. That's why white wines are white and clear. And then this one, because they use some grapes that have not perfectly green on the outside, you start to get a little bit more color. And the longer you set the wine in the skins, it's going to get a deeper, darker color. And it's a really good example for people who want to drink a white wine, but know that the people they're with probably don't really like white wine. So you get the white wine aromas, the flavors that you like, but the red wine drinker is going to get a little bit more of the tannins and the little bit more bitterness that they look for and that they want. So it's a great wine for Singapore.
You wouldn't call it a rosé then?
No, this would be an amber or an orange wine.
Okay.
I think, yeah, skin contact is the best way to call it.
Okay.
We're talking about wine now.
Yeah, I know. I'll have some of that skin contact wine, please. What about bubbles? I mean, you deal with bubbles as well, I'm sure. What's the difference between like a sparkling wine and a bottle of, say, cava, prosecco, champagne? What are the differences between the two?
Yeah, so cava and champagne are the same method of making sparkling. So they'll do one fermentation, usually in stainless steel or a barrel. And then they'll put that wine into a bottle. Like, let's just give an example. So they'll put it in, and then it'll be clear with a little bottle cap on it, and they'll put it down like this, and they'll kind of just turn it repeatedly to let the yeast cells for however long that they want to. In champagne, it's anywhere from 18 months to 15 years on that, so you get that brioche-ness. Cava is made the same way. If you see something that says method champenoise or traditional method, that's going to be the champagne style, which I think is the most common. But then Prosecco is just a fermentation and adding carbon dioxide into a big tank. So they call it the tank method or Charmat method. So the bubbles are not quite as refined. They're not as strong as like a champagne or a cava, but both can be quite enjoyable depending on your mood.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know all of that.
Yeah. We do have a question on our Facebook page. How do you age wine if I bought a bottle?
Well, there's two ways you can drink it, and then as we age it. No, I'm kidding. So it depends. About 95% of all wines in the world are not meant to age. Most are meant to be drunk, 1 to 5 years.
Okay.
Whites 1 to 3 years. Most reds 3 to 5 years. But if you want to age a wine, I'd make sure that it's in a cool, stable environment. Here in Singapore, I think you really need a wine fridge for those purposes, or a storage space that keeps it cooler. There's evidence. A lot of people will say that you have to lay it down because you want the juice to hit the cork. Yeah. But there's studies recently have shown that that's not necessary as long as it's a stable environment. If you live near an MRT station, make sure you don't put your wine bottles on right above where the train goes, because that'll shake the juice. But yeah, a cool, stable environment. Your bomb shelters are probably pretty good if you've got a wine fridge in there.
Okay.
That's where we keep our wine fridge. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about wine, but we'll say goodbye to Bibi and Joey on air. If you want to watch the entire interview, you can always head to our Facebook channel or our YouTube channel at Kiss 92 FM.
The Big Show. Kiss 92.
Okay, so what was I going to say? Okay, if I have a bottle, how long can I keep it then? I mean, like sometimes I have bottles from like past Christmas parties and stuff like that. Are you saying that 1 to 3 years only for white wine and a little bit longer for red? That's the maximum?
No, I mean, I think the general rule is that not as long. But if you get a wine that has good high acidity, or high tannins, or high alcohol, those are going to be the ones that are going to age longer. So your Cabernets are going to do well. Pinot Noirs that have a good amount of acidity and a good little bit backbone, those are going to last a good amount of time. But I always tell people, like, if you're lucky and you can, and you want to get and you really like this wine, buy like 3 to 6 bottles of it, because we're always going to want to open one immediately when we buy something, because that's just normal. But then you can try it maybe in a year or two, and then if you're like, at this point it's pretty much where I want it, then you can drink all the rest in within the year. But then it's going to help you, because I find a lot of people think they like old wine and they actually don't, because as a wine ages, it loses fruit, it loses the freshness, and for a lot of people that's not enjoyable. I know people who old reds can turn into almost like a soy sauce taste, and it's just it can't. It's for a lot of people that's not exciting, but for other people they love it. So I think that goes back to the personal preference thing at the beginning.
Can you then use it for cooking? I mean, if it turns into like soy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I
So
won't
it's
say
not
which
to waste.
producer, but we had someone come over with a quite expensive Burgundy wine, and the 3 or 4 of us at the table were not big fans of it. So I put it away, and I cooked a nice beef bourguignon later with it. Probably the most expensive wine I've ever used, but it was the only good way to drink that wine.
Well, let's hope it was good beef that you used as well, right? Okay, Bibi, where are you at now? And you can let everyone know where to find your recipe as well.
So what I've done is put some water in there. If you have vegetable stocks, use that. Just to lightly, cover the pan. But this is the fun part where we add the wine into the chicken. So I'm just going to pour, and after it's being mixed properly, I'm going to pop this back into the oven for about half an hour, and then it is ready to serve. So
nice.
The recipe, together with information about what Joey does and where these wines are from, please hop on to Food Tales with Bibi.
Okay, let's see you pour that wine before we say goodbye.
Here we go. Cheers.
There's the magic.
It's early to
Whoa,
cook, but
magic,
not
magic.
Too early to cook with it.
No, never too early to cook. Okay, thank you, Bibi. Thank you, Joey, so much for joining us this Monday morning.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you
Thanks.
next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.